Joining me today is Sandy Carter, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Business Development for Unstoppable Domains. Welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
You too. I think we talked a little bit last time when you were in town to keynote the Powered Up event here in St. Petersburg. That I definitely have both an NFT and mainly a domain addiction. So I was very excited when Unstoppable Domains came into existence.
Yeah, why not? We love people with domain addiction. So continue on. And I love the initiatives that you're doing with the Cityverse, and
thank you.
I'm hoping that all goes great.
So let's dig in a little bit. We'll kind of start with what Unstoppable started with, and then move on to the things that Unstoppable has moved on to. You came out in the domain space with NFTs that represented domains. You offered an initial batch of top level domains, and then you've done more over time. So talk a little bit about that and how that's rolled since you've joined.
Yeah, so the company was actually started in 2018, and we started with a simple use case, almost like, the internet, right? Where you used to have to type in a TCP/IP address, and then you got to type in Amazon.com. We're doing the same thing for crypto. So that was the very first use case, was taking a domain name like sandy.nft and ensuring that it resolved to an address, your crypto address, which is this long series of letters and numbers, and vice versa. That was the very first use case. And we had just several top-level domain names like .nft, .crypto, .x, those sort of things. Since that time, we've evolved in a couple of different ways. We're now a unicorn, which is quite exciting. Only about 2% of all startups become a unicorn. So we're real thrilled about that. And then probably more importantly, we continue to add value to our users. So for example, we now not just resolve that crypto address, we have over 800 partner integrations. So we have 170 wallet integrations, which means you can use Sandy.nft for 170, not just one, but 170 different wallets. We also have some really cool things, like you can use it for an email address or a decentralized website, or to log into many different things as well. So it's really come a long way, I must say. We now even have a profile page that enables you to display your brand in an authentic and credentialed way.
Yeah, and that identity piece certainly seems to be on your path as well, which is really great. So, again, starting with the use in websites, the existing system is DNS, domain name system, which is governed. The .coms and the .orgs are actually owned by private companies, and then it kind of all rolls through this sort of board, kind of almost, strange, not really known about board that really makes a lot of big decisions as through the traditional rails as to who can have domains and how that system works. Very lucrative, and also sort of what we got with the first iteration of what the internet was. To move on from that, which blockchain is a logical choice for that. What has to happen for crypto domains to play nicely with existing domains, and how does that end up rolling out over the years?
Yeah, I would say this is pretty much on the evolution of any new technology, right? You kind of start out, it's a wild west, and then you get standards groups. And that's where really we are today with Web3. We're starting to see the emergence of standards. So for example, there is the Open Metaverse Alliance, which is really determining how to identify land in the metaverse, which will be done through a domain or a digital identity. We're seeing blockchain gaming do the same. They're setting up standards for how you work with a blockchain game. And then we help to initiate a new alliance called the Web3 Domain Alliance. And in that alliance, we are really framing up how we'll avoid naming collisions in the Web3 space. So we're a consortium. We're not as big as ICANN in the space, which governs Web 2, but part of what we've adopted is we don't want to collide with Web 2 because we're really about protection of the user or consumer protection. So we don't want to do anything that will cause that collision. It's really important because not only could you have a collision on a website, which could put up the wrong website, but more importantly, because a Web3 domain has transaction money, we could have a potential collision of where you transfer money. So this is really important to us on behalf of the industry. This Web3 Domain Alliance, we believe, is super important.
That's great. And any indication how, I know they're only dealing with the web piece of it, but how open they are, or how understanding they are of the inevitability of this happening, and their willingness to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working really well with ICANN. There are some things we're working on together to help bridge the gap. In fact, next week, I'm also speaking at a conference called NamesCon. Typically, that's for Web 2 domains, but this year we're going to have a keynote by a Web 3 domain provider, Unstoppable. So I'll get to speak on stage. I'm going to be in 2 panels, and we're auctioning off a Web 3 domain, which usually they only auction off Web 2 domains. So we'll be launching that auction off too. So we're real excited. I think there's a lot of progress, and I think that having both of these coexist together is really valuable for the consumer, for the user as we move forward, which is what our mission is.
Yeah, most definitely. And you bring up important points about Web3, in that when you have your own domain that your company or you individually are attached to, it is kind of your home. But in the Web 2 world, you don't own that home. Your domain is only good so long as you're renting it from these certain people. Rules could change, prices could go up, and ultimately you aren't in control of this thing that is so integral to your identity online. But Web 3 now, you have the ability to have full ownership on the blockchain of this this address or this identity, this asset, this place that you call home, which could represent your your website, also your crypto destination for cryptocurrencies and all that good stuff. So is that fair to say that that's really taking the idea of a place on the internet to a whole new level?
Yeah, I would say you really summarized it well. It's really about ownership of data. Who owns the data? And in the Web 2 world, that ownership has really gone to platforms. So a lot of big companies. So for example, you have a digital identity in Web 2. It's your username and password. But if you log into, let's say, a Google or a TikTok or a Twitter, all of that data about you is owned by them. In fact, Facebook and Google came out and said they made $100 billion on selling yours and mine data last year. That's a lot of money, right? A lot of value. So the ownership there of data is with the platforms. Now, if you switch over to Web3, one of the reasons I really love it is I think our digital identities, like who we are, is made up of that data, and that data needs to be owned by us. We should get to decide who gets access to the data, when they get access to it, how much data they get, how long they get to keep it for, and we should also get rewarded for that data. So, for example, right now we're looking at event companies who are leveraging your digital identity to host your proof of attendance at an event. I could get rewarded for that. Instead of getting that $100 billion to someone else, I could get rewarded for that, for a 25% discount off of my next event, for example. Or even education, proving that I went to a certain school or I took a certain class. Having that in my digital identity, I should own that, not have to always call someone, get them to fax me information, and trade that information. So for me, I summarized, the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is who owns the data. And I believe Web 3 really got it right. It's our data. It's our digital identity. We should own that data.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And the process is with trustlessness, you can disintermediate the trust building entity. So, obviously in finance, the bank is the trust holding entity, and now people can go peer to peer and making loans through, the different DAOs and things like that. And the same should be true for, the large trust holding entities or data holding entities that, are the relay between the consumer and the advertising buyer. Perfect chance to take them out of the picture and give that, that power to individuals.
Yeah, I agree. And, a lot of people will say, in this new environment, what should I do first? Like, how do I get started? And one of the first things I recommend is what you did, right? You got your domain, which is your digital identity. And then you need to take the step to get it set up to really showcase your brand, what you want your brand to stand for, and then how you're going to use that data. So as you use that to sign into different applications, you get to decide who gets the data, how much they get, et cetera. So this morning, I actually used Sandy.nft to sign into an app, and it wanted my email. And I was like, there's no reason for this app to have my email. I don't want to get flooded with a bunch of advertising. So I said, no, I don't want to share my email. And that gives me a lot of power, gives me the ownership of that data. And it really helps me to get started in this new Web3 or the new internet world, right, as well.
That's great. And you talked a little bit about us being in the Wild West now. You're in the NFT business. You have a business in NFTs that isn't about flipping for value necessarily, even though that does happen with domains. But it's not. It's sort of an ancillary piece of it, not the core piece of it. So the NFT market, you're partnered with OpenSea as well, which is obviously the biggest marketplace. How should people think about NFTs now in the sort of adolescent state they're in, and where's the value in NFTs in the next few years? Where do you think that emerges most?
So for me, I think the value lies in utility. And what that means is that you can do something with the NFT. I think that's really where the future will be, that the NFT has value, not just because it's a picture of a monkey, but because it gets me access to something, or it brings some value to me. I can log into something. I can get, encrypted email, but I can do something with that NFT. I really consider what we do at Unstoppable Domain as a super NFT. We have a lot of discussion now about super apps. I think we have a super NFT because inside of that digital identity, you hold your other NFTs or your other tokens. And so I think that super NFTs that enable you to do token gating, meaning that, if you belong to a super community, you get certain benefits, or if you hold certain digital collectibles, you get certain benefits. I think that those will have a lot of value as we move forward. So what I would advise people to look at is, if I'm buying an NFT, what is the utility of that NFT? What is the value it can bring me? So I use my digital identity, Sandy.nft, every day to log in, to do email, to do token gating, or to pick out these micro communities I want to be a part of, which I think is the future. So look for that. Like, what can you do with it versus just hold and sell it?
Yeah. And Unstoppable is creating some of these micro communities as well. Congratulations. I think the round was 65 million at a 1 billion valuation, putting you on the rare unicorn list, which is awesome. Can you talk a little bit about who made the investment and the purpose for the investment, and what the funds are going to go to, and fulfilling your roadmap as a company?
Yeah, so Pantera actually led our funding round. And I think if you know Pantera, I've gotten to know them a little bit, had a couple of dinners with them. They're really savvy in this Web3 blockchain space. So we're really happy to have investors who truly understand what we're doing and the utility and the value to the users. Of course, Tim Draper, he was one of our original investors, and he also reinvested, always a positive sign to have people that invested in you at the beginning continue to support you and love what you're doing and you're growing. Our investment has really gone to a lot of business development. We have now over 800 integrations, 825 to be exact. When I started with the company a year and a half ago, we had 41 integrations. So we've gone from 41 to 825. And why that matters is each of those integrations adds value, adds utility to our user. So each one of those brings something special, right? Whether it's access to a metaverse or a new wallet or, a new way to leverage what you're doing in a blockchain game. All of those have value. So that's one of the areas. And then the second was engineering, right? You always have to be engineering led as your initial startup. And so we have come out with lots of new offerings. We came out with something called parking. So if you're brand new to the Web3 space, you don't have to have a wallet. You can park in like a vault. You can just store your digital collectibles in that vault. We've done AI avatars, which is a great way to use artificial intelligence to design a way to showcase yourself in the metaverse. So AI avatars as well. We've done things like build out that profile page, which enables you to see everything and index on everything as well. So I think the investment has primarily gone to business development to get us more utility, more usage, as well as to engineering to get us more offerings out there. Again, all adding value for our customer.
That's great. And you use the term digital collectibles. NFTs probably really associated with the art boom. They're confusing. Non-fungible token doesn't roll off the tongue, and usually when people say what it is, it just distracts from the purpose of what it's trying to do with this sort of convoluted name. How do you see, or how would you like to see the branding of what essentially are records on the blockchain go in the future? Should they be split up between digital collectibles and other things and break out of this sort of lump umbrella name NFT?
I do. I think that NFT is very confusing. And, again, every emerging tech comes up with its own language. And usually it's a tech focused language. So non-fungible token, like how more technical can you get than that? So I do see us moving to a space where, we're talking about digital collectibles or passports or stamps in a passport. Even instead of using badges, talking about micro communities or groups of people that have something similar together instead of token gating, similar interest that you get rewarded for. I think so many of these words we can just replace with normal human words, and it'll be so much more accessible. This is why I love what Starbucks did with Odyssey and what Reddit did with the way they launched with digital collectibles, because they used normal language that everybody could understand. The technology underneath was what was driving the power and the value, but they didn't continue to talk about the technology.
That makes a lot of sense. And you personally, you've been really hitting the road, kind of putting that business development hat on, and how many speaking gigs are you doing a year now, and how much time are you even home?
Whoa, I don't even know. I think for a while when we were in conference season, I was speaking every 2 weeks, every other week. I think it's going to slow down here. We've got NamesCon next week, and I think then it will slow down a bit. But I think, as again, you're starting in any emerging tech, evangelism is really important, right? Education. I view a big part of my role as helping to educate people on the power and the value that it brings to the table. And usually, now that we're post-COVID, everybody wants to do events. So instead of just doing a lot of virtual things, it really makes a big difference if you can get out there and meet in person. And, just like you and I met in real life, it makes a big difference on your relationship and how things are going. So I think that's a really powerful part of what we need to do. Usually second half of the year is a lot of international travel. So we've got some big conferences coming up in Paris, for instance, at ECC. As well as in Asia with Token 2049. So I've got some big trips coming up like that. That'll be quite interesting, but really important, right? And those geos in particular, they're far ahead on Web3 and the metaverse. They've really adopted crypto. They've made laws and regulations that really support the growth and innovation in the space. And so it's really helpful to get outside the US sometimes and just see what the rest of the world is doing, because it's really being catapulted much faster than what we're seeing here in the US today.
Yeah, and certainly there's some risk in that, because once the rails are built elsewhere, they're fully accessible to us here, and then the laws will make it inconvenient. But as we've seen with the way corporations move around the world, that only works so well. And ultimately, it seems to be just the average folks that don't have those means that kind of can't access them. But Web3 changes all that. So really, it's really up to the government to stay up to speed and not to get left behind.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, that's why I think it's really important that you've got these innovation hubs like, Silicon Valley and Austin, and what you guys are doing in Tampa to support that innovation and to really help it thrive and grow. Because I do think that that's what made America great, is all of our innovation. So we need these hubs to continue to impact and influence and push that growth and innovation forward.
And I think we should at least get a little shout out for our friend Hunter at Relic Tickets, who was a great host to both of us when you were down here and got us in the same room. And I got to say, the feedback on your talk at Powered Up was fantastic, and was really appreciated you making the trip down to do that. So it's just the fact that this event, which really represents the tech leaders at all the more traditional companies, chose you to be the keynote, kind of really shows the direction we're heading. So it's great.
I was so thankful, to Megan and the team, that whole event team, everybody I met, Joe, was super, super, I guess I would say wicked smart. Like, they're really into tech. They know what's going on. They want to innovate and they want to grow. And that's what I love so much about that Tampa Bay tech event, was the people I met there were incredible. I loved, and I was so honored to do the keynote. But I think that I really took away a lot from your community, for sure, because of the smartness and the insights that I gained from you guys as well. And the CEO, like, I met so many CEOs, made so many great connections. I think I had over 500 new LinkedIn connections just from that event. And all of them have been really fascinating and very interesting.
That's fantastic. That's great. Well, I'm happy to hear that. That's we got a special thing going down here, and it's good to get a witness, as a visit in to validate that. Oh, very much appreciate the time. I know you're on the move, so we'll end it here. But Unstoppable is great. I mean, I will say you have a dream job. You're building, making domains, and traveling the world talking about them. It's not a bad gig. Congratulations on that. And now fully funded.
Thank you. Yeah, I love what I do. I love helping our customers and our partners, for sure.
Sandy Carter, good to catch up.
Thank you, Joe, very much.